the more popular I got, I realized that my personal connection with Allah started to die down. And I didn't focus as much on my own personal development. On one hand, I intellectually and rationally, I had all the arguments and points where I could convince atheists that Islam is the truth. But on the other hand, I was empty internally. And it was a very strange place to be. I don't believe atheism is in a vacuum. It's not something that stands on its own self, because it's very weak foundationally. It takes a few minutes to realize atheism hasn't got any legs to stand on, as they say. But why is it prominent? Why is it growing to whatever degree it is? Because it is linked with other things. And if we could just remind ourselves, subhanAllah, that every moment you get in the dawah to do something for the sake of Allah is a moment of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's a blessing.
It's a huge blessing. And that He is choosing you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome again to a new episode of Hikmah Talk. This episode is a little bit different than usual because it's in English, obviously. And we have a special guest all the way from UK. He's active now in Hier for some years. And I've been following him for a few months now on YouTube. He's very upcoming. His brother Imran Hussein. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, very good.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very good.
How's life?
Life is good.
Alhamdulillah,
it's been non-stop since yesterday because we've been here for the course, but alhamdulillah, it's been really good.
So is this your first time in Holland?
No, I've been once, I think, or twice before.
Yeah, and how do you like it?
Short trips. This time around, I actually like it. Where we're staying, it's a really nice... how do you say? I still can't pronounce it. It's
the what?
The city name of the city.
Delft.
Okay. Yeah. It's a really nice city because the brothers told us it's a student city and you've got old buildings and cathedrals and churches and just the architecture and just the surroundings are really beautiful, mashallah.
Okay.
Because before when we just came into Amsterdam and that's what we saw of Netherlands.
Yeah, like me personally, I don't like Amsterdam because it's a very crowded city with a lot of tourists.
Yes, it is a tourist city.
It's a tourist city, yeah. Basically in Delft and other cities, you'll find it more calmly and actually nicer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I loved it here. It was really nice, mashallah. Pleasant. Nice canals everywhere.
Yeah.
And me and Richard were wondering how the city doesn't flood when it's a storm, like today. And he said the water never comes out. It's amazing, mashallah.
Like this weekend.
Yeah.
The storm.
Like now outside, storm.
It's very windy outside. Yeah. So can you tell me briefly about your story? Like how did you came to Hier?
Yeah.
Like, what were your motives?
It's a long story, so let me shorten it for you. I started practicing about close to 8-9 years ago now. So I was born in a Muslim family, wasn't religious through my life, went through some things in my life, really difficult times where I started questioning my own existence, my purpose, why am I here, what's life all about. Couldn't find answers under the way I was living, so I was living like what you consider a typical secular type atheist, just enjoying life, doing whatever you want, no concern about God, no concern about the hereafter, didn't even have there's people that ask the question, does God exist or not? I was even further than that. I wasn't even bothered, like some people are these days. I just didn't want to know. So then I got to the point, obviously, then Allah puts signs in your life, and sometimes the signs could be those type of signs that shake you up. And I got one of those signs, and I went through a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety for several years, engaging with these questions about meaning and purpose, until finally I found Islam, found the answer. And when I came back to Islam, if you like, I had this realization, this deep feeling deep inside me that, okay, this is the truth. I've been blessed with it now, but at the same time I felt this huge pressure on me now. I need to share this with others because there's people out there that don't know, that are suffering from what I'm suffering from, what I had been suffering from, that also need the answers. So I need to get this message out to people. So it's a very natural progression for me. Started giving dawah locally in a little town called Ealing, close to where I lived, for about a year with the local brothers. And then eventually we did a few dawah campaigns. Then a brother from Hier spotted me on one of the videos that we put out. It was called Christmas Dawah Day. We did back in about 6-7 years ago. And brother Sabur Ahmed, who's a very good friend of mine now, and he does all the evolution. He's Mr. Evolution, as you see him on YouTube. He does. He called me a couple of times. We got in touch, met up, and then the rest is history, bro. So I started working with Ira part time. Started up LDM, London Dawah Movement channel, which is not active now, but that's some of the project we worked on, and then finally started working with Ira. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so you're now. So what's basically your function at Ira?
I work as the title is outreach specialist.
Okay.
But what basically means is that my job basically is I'm focusing on the UK primarily. So focusing on UK means supporting the teams, making sure that they have training, materials, whatever else they need, to make sure the dawah is healthy in the area. Also doing trainings, talks, lectures, and especially January, February, March is ISOC month, so big focus on the ISOCs, working with local mosques, communities, things like this basically.
Yeah. Okay, so how did your life change after you became a da'i? Because you have a YouTube channel, which is online for like 5 years, I think. So how do you deal with the fame, for example?
Yeah, I couldn't deal with it at a point, if I'm being very honest. There was a point where I joined Ira, and those days, about 7 years ago, that's when people are really getting into the YouTube, the Muslims were getting on the YouTube scene, making videos. Because prior to that, you only had Hamza and Adnan Rashid from the Dawah
and
Sabur and a few other brothers, but not many people were online. Even Sabur wasn't online then. So way back in the day, and we started getting involved, going Speakers Corner. When we started going Speakers Corner, there were hardly any cameras there, right? So there's probably maybe one camera, if at best. We started filming stuff there, talks on the ladder, discussions with people, putting them online, and they got very popular. They started going viral. Some of the videos got hundreds of thousands of views. And the problem was that I wasn't mature enough in my deen at the time to realize the potential harms of that fame. So I fell into the traps, and it was subtle. It wasn't that I knew, but over time what starts happening is the more popular you get, and it can happen, and it's quite dangerous, the more popular I got, I realized that my personal connection with Allah started to die down. And I didn't focus as much on my own personal development. To the point where after about a year and a half, I got to the point where it was all about putting up videos, getting views. As far as my prayer was concerned, it was very bad. I would rush it, I would delay it. I had pretty much zero to none connection with Allah. And what was interesting, bro, is I got to the point where on one hand, I intellectually and rationally, I had all the arguments and points where I could convince atheists that Islam is the truth. But on the other hand, I was empty internally. And it was a very strange place to be. And then one day, just suddenly, it just all collapsed. And I, again, was at square one again, right? So I didn't even know what was going on. I knew it was the truth, because rationally I was convinced. But I had to work on myself because my heart was dead. And that was a very strange place to be, and I wish I had no one. So I had to rebuild, and I went offline. I went off social media for about 3 or 4 years. And only recently, past 2 years or so, I've started to slowly, gradually come back on social media. So to deal with fame, what I would say from my experience, it's be very careful. You know, if you have to stay on top of your connection with Allah, if your connection with Allah is not there and it's not strong, be very careful. Don't even dabble with that type of stuff until you feel you're ready, basically.
Yeah, I think also it's really important to have like people in your surroundings that help you with the fame, actually, that try to make you humble yourself. Yeah,
I had that.
Otherwise, it will get in your head.
Yeah, like this. I'll be honest. I'll tell you, Hamza Totsis was a big player for me in my life, bro. The guy broke me down at points, and I haven't ever said this publicly, but I think it's very important because you mentioned the point. He was probably the only guy that put me in my place, because I literally was the point, and he was the only one I respected to listen to. And he would literally, he literally, like, without getting into detail, he said, look, stop the online YouTube stuff, get off it. You know, you're nothing. You know, you think too highly of yourself. But he did it in such a beautiful and subtle way, bro, where he just naturally put me in a role which became a safety zone for me. So he gave me a role. I got a role in IRA where I was safe like I wasn't online anymore. I was focusing on video editing. I was focusing on the behind the scenes, helping Hamza with bits and pieces, helping with filming stuff. And I hated it inside. And I hated him for it as well. Like there was points where I said, I really hated Hamza, you know, because like, bro, I'm a speaker. You know, I have this, I speak, Allah's blessed me with the ability to speak. Why are you making me do this, that, and the other? Inside, I used to think these things, you know. But now, sitting here today, you know, may Allah bless him, you know, I can't thank him enough for doing that. Allah made him the means for really humbling me, bro. And he knew he was doing that. And you need people like that in your life. Because if you don't have that, bro, you'll be finished.
Yeah, he's a really wise guy.
He's such a, may Allah bless him, bro. He's a gem. He is a very special person that Allah has blessed with some amazing skills and abilities that we could all learn from, bro. Like I haven't come across a person like him in my life. Like intellectually, he's on another level. Like we're just scratching the surface of what he's capable of, or what he can do, and what he knows. Like sometimes I discuss things with him in the office, bro, and I'm standing there, I'm listening to him, like, huh? And I'm trying to keep it straight. I don't get it. It takes me like 4 hours to understand what he said, but it finally drops in and I get it. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, there's so much we can learn from the guy, mashallah. He's amazing from many different perspectives.
SubhanAllah.
I would say what's more impressive about him is not his intellectual capacity and abilities, what he can do in that realm, but it's who he is as a person. That's what's profound about him, you know. There's so much we can learn from him, subhanAllah, from that perspective.
Okay, the next question is basically like how has the dawah impacted your life? Like what did you learn in your path to becoming a da'i?
Humility along the way, by seeing the opposite, which is arrogance, and experiencing it myself personally. Because remember, we work with opposites as human beings. We only appreciate good when we see and experience evil and suffering. So I now, looking back, I learned humility. That was a big lesson in my life. I also realized that we are all disposable. No one is promised anything. Nothing's owed to you. You don't deserve anything. You know, this position that we have, that you have, that I have, everything we're doing, it doesn't belong to us. It's not because we're someone special. The fact is that Allah chose us. And if we could just remind ourselves, subhanAllah, that every moment you get in the dawah to do something for the sake of Allah is a moment of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's a blessing.
It's a huge blessing. And that He is choosing you. And just knowing that He is choosing you to do something for His sake, it blows your mind, man. Because it reminds you there's so many millions of people out there that Allah could have chosen, that are far more capable than you and me, that are far more knowledgeable than us, that are far more articulate than us, that are far more compassionate and honest and sincere than us, but Allah chose us. And that's His mercy. And that just, you know, it brings you closer to Allah if you allow it to, and if you don't become arrogant. So those are probably the main two things, subhanAllah, that I've taken.
Yeah, subhanAllah. And did you ever thought back in the day that you'll be working with era? Like, did you have that vision, or did it came later on, actually?
No, I never had the vision originally. There was points I didn't want to work with IRA when I was working there, because of obviously I wanted to do certain things and I wasn't, but Allah has the plan for everyone. And now I'm grateful, you know, that I have an opportunity to work for such an organization, you know, that was led by a person like Hamza. You know, it's a big blessing, subhanAllah. So yeah, I never had that plan, but now that I'm there, I'm very, very grateful, and I'd love to carry on working with them. Inshallah.
Yeah. So how would you see yourself after 10 years?
That's a good question, bro. That's a proper interviewer question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So I guess there's a few things I've thought about. One thing that I would hope is that, you know, I can carry on working in the dawah, inshallah. Yeah. That I can develop myself more, learn more, and then inshallah give more as well. You know, I'm at that point in my life now. I'm 32 years old. I hope and I believe I've matured enough to understand or realize the skills Allah has given me and the weaknesses that I do have, and to sort of play off of the abilities and skills I have, and to sort of maximize those for the dawah more and utilize those more in the dawah, and to sort of work on my weaknesses as well. And I just see myself trying to do a bit more in the dawah and work harder and put more things out. I'm working on my book at the moment.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, the working title is called Dying to Believe. That's the title of the book. So it sort of shares my journey and my story. That should be out in the next year, by the end of this year, inshallah. So that's something in the near future that I'm working on. I may go back into education, may go into studying, maybe go and study something at university. But these are things I've been thinking about. But one of the things I want to carry on working in the dawah, inshallah.
Yeah, may Allah make you succeed.
Ameen, inshallah. Am I making you run out of questions? Because I'm answering them so quickly.
Yeah, I actually had a question, but I forgot it.
Okay.
Let me think about it. What advice would you give the younger people who struggle to find the truth, actually? Because you have been in that place as well.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give them?
So the very first thing I would tell people is that, look, you have to become aware of your surroundings, because what happens is we are a product of our environment, right? So and what happens is, because we're a product of our environment, we don't stop and think about our environment. We just go with whatever feels right according to how we've been conditioned to think. So the way Muslims and everyone have been conditioned to think in the 21st century, especially in the West, there are certain underlying philosophies which are driven into our minds and our hearts, such as seeing is believing. You're a blank slate. You have to acquire knowledge. What's around you is what's true and what you should focus on. Focus on the material world. That's what's important. Focus on this life. These type of ideas are drilled into us, which are very and against the traditional notion of religion and what Islam is and what Islam teaches and what God tells us. Because Allah tells us to focus on the reality, which is this life, but predominantly on the next life. On the fact that we were created to worship Him and not to be immersed in the material physical world, right? So, so when a Muslim faces the Quran and studies and looks at the Quran and looks at Islam from the perspective of the 21st century, they see many things which don't really appeal to them from that perspective then. So it's about firstly understanding that the environment you're in, just because you have been born in it and been brought up in it, it doesn't mean it's correct or everything it teaches or promotes is true. It may be appealing to you, to your nafs, to yourself, to your desires, but it doesn't mean it's the best thing for you. So it's to become aware of that. Because a lot of Muslims, unfortunately, as an example these days, they would say, oh, where's the evidence for God? Give me proof God exists, right? And again, this idea stems from the assumption that you need proof for everything. That there are not some truths which are innate, that are known. So we have in Islam the concept of fitrah, where the belief of Allah is natural, it's innate within human beings. Not that we don't have evidences and proofs, etc. We have all of that. But the point is that there are innate truths, but we don't want to recognize those these days, right? There are axiomatic beliefs. But the problem is we're told half the story sometimes as well, because science is promoted on the other hand. Science is the way to truth. It's the most amazing thing. You want to be scientific, not religious. And they try to split these two things and separate these two things. By the way, there is no separation. Islam and science go hand in hand. Together, yeah. Absolutely. But the point is that there are different narratives out there which are pushing people away from religion and pushing people towards an atheistic, sort of naturalistic outlook on life. So the point being, people need to realize that the whole picture, even science is based on axioms, things that science can't prove. The real world is real. You can't prove it. It's an assumption. It's a belief. It's a basic belief. No different. We believe in Allah. The belief in Allah is a basic, axiomatic, fundamental belief. It's a part of our nature, part of our fitrah, right? And to start there, and also to realize that if you deny Allah, if you turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does life mean? Life loses all meaning, right? There is no meaning. There is no purpose. There is no value. There are no ethics and morals, objective morals and ethics. Everything breaks down. You can't make sense of anything. You can't make sense of an ordered universe. You can't make sense of a rational mind that has the ability to think. Because if you remove Allah, remove God, what is it? Everything is a result of what? Just blind, random physical processes. It's all one big accident, right? Yeah, that's essentially what it is. And if that's what it is, then you can't make sense of all of these ordered things that we see in the world around us, and these principles we believe in, and these ideas that we have as ethical, moral human beings that are rational. So reality goes against this notion. So it's to get people to start thinking again. Because most people don't think these days. They just follow what people are saying as long as it allows them to fulfill what they want to fulfill and express their desires. That's problematic. We have to sort of put our desires and wants on one side for a second and use the aql that Allah has given us. And if we do that sincerely, it will lead us to God. So I think that's what I would mention to the youth, to become people who learn and study, because our tradition, our Islamic tradition is based on learning and studying. And learn for yourself, study for yourself, acquire knowledge, and it will open your mind.
SubhanAllah, what I see nowadays a lot, even with Muslims as well, is that they're starting to get a lot of doubts about Islam. Like maybe something happened in their lives, or and they say like, why is my life so messed up? Why doesn't God help me? So sometimes I think that we should give actually also dawah to non-Muslims or to Muslims. So what do you think about that? Should we focus on dawah, on giving dawah to Muslims as well as non-Muslims? Or
both? Everyone needs advice. Everyone needs to be reminded, right? So Muslims too, and Muslims seem to have sometimes have the same questions as non-Muslims do. SubhanAllah. Right? So why is there suffering and evil in the world? Why am I going through this? Why am I suffering? Why has my dad got cancer? Why does my mom have Alzheimer's? We all have these questions, right? But again, the problem is the underlying assumptions. The assumption is the life should be perfect. So why are we assuming this? That's what we're being sold, the American dream, have the most beautiful, amazing life, because they want you to focus on this life. And what's interesting is I believe there are underlying reasons for this, bro. I don't believe atheism is in a vacuum. It's not something that stands on its own self, because it's very weak foundationally. It takes a few minutes to realize atheism hasn't got any legs to stand on, as they say. But why is it prominent? Why is it growing to whatever degree it is? Because it is linked with other things. As soon as you disconnect the human being from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have a tool that you can use. You have a person who was created to worship. You remove his object of worship, the true object of worship. Now that person's empty and he's looking to fulfill himself with something. And he goes looking everywhere. So what does he see? What's the first thing we see? We see the dunya, the world around us. Enter materialism, consumerism. Okay, you want to buy this new house, you need to buy this new car, you need to buy this, that and the other. This will bring you happiness. This will give you the perfect life, having that nice sofa, the TV. And then we run after these things. And that becomes our paradigm, right? And then who is this benefiting at the end of the day? It's benefiting the guys that pull the strings at the top of the chain, right? Because we're just sheep at the end of the day to them that they're using then. And we start running after these things, and we have this false perception in our mind that life is meant to be perfect. This is the perfect life. Then when things go wrong, we start blaming God. Why did you have to do this to me? Well, who told you life was supposed to be perfect anyway? Not Allah. Allah told you clearly, this life is a test. This is not paradise. Paradise is coming in the next life. Right? This is where you work for your paradise. And to work for it, you're going to be tested. You're going to go through hardships. You're going to go through trials. You're going to be tested with the loss of life, loss of wealth. Right? You're going to be tested with famine. Right? This is reality. And then they say, well, why does Allah, if Allah is good and loving, why does He let evil things happen? Well, you have to remember, Allah is not only good and loving, He's the most wise. He's the all-knowing. So there is wisdom behind things. There are wisdoms behind the evil and trials you go through, that suffering you go through. Right? It's a part of your test. Right? Just because you can't see the wisdom, it doesn't mean there's no wisdom there. Right? But what happens is, again, it's that arrogance. It's the arrogance we develop, which is, I should know all the wisdom. God should tell me. If I can't see it, it's not there. This is arguing from the ego. Right? So people need to realize this, and this comes to humility. You have to humble yourself. You are not God. You don't know everything. Right? And there is wisdom behind things, and you have to go through this test. And if you pass this test, you get paradise, that life you're looking for, the ideal life.
Exactly.
But it's not going to happen here. That's not what it's supposed to be. And people need to wake up to this. And they may not like this idea, because the conditioning is, no, it's supposed to be perfect here. But no, you have to realize what's speaking now. When you think like that, what is it about you that's reacting like that? It's just your ego. It's your nafs that wants just more. It wants it now. It wants it immediately. And you have to control that. You have to let the higher self come out and the lower self go down, basically. But it's, again, putting things into perspective for people.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
SubhanAllah, now the time is going up really fast. let's wind it up. Do you have any last words for the listeners at home?
Keep watching this podcast, inshallah. I think it'll be beneficial. I haven't seen your other stuff. It's not out yet, but when it is out, I'm sure it'll benefit many, many people, inshallah. And also if you can do one thing as a Muslim, is to develop a strong relationship with the Quran. Wallahi, bro, I've noticed this amongst the Muslims, even amongst many of the students of knowledge. One thing I've realized is that the connection with the Quran is lacking, right? We focus on the fiqh, we focus on studying other sciences in the tradition in Islam, but very little attention is paid to studying the Quran itself, and studying it in a way where you sit and you reflect upon it. We know this book is timeless. We know this book applies till the Day of Judgment. Then why are we not accessing it like that? Why are we not turning to it and looking at the ayat of the Quran and thinking, okay, what does this ayah say to me today in the 21st century? How can I use this to change my life today? Okay, I'll end on this here. Think about this. There are people today in the 21st century that, Harry Potter, is it popular in the Netherlands?
Yeah.
It's globally it's popular, right?
Really popular here.
But if you go online, you will see that some universities have made modules where they are studying Harry Potter to try gain guidance from this book and to see how this can show us character development and change our lives. They're studying a fairy tale, literally, because this shows how desperate people are for guidance. Why not approach the Quran? Why are we Muslims not approaching the Quran, which is guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is there right in front of us? If we really know what this is, we will not put it down. And just to have that daily connection with the Quran, and that will change your life, inshallah.
Yeah, subhanAllah. Those were some beautiful last words from Imran Hussein. We're going to end this podcast now.
So you're going to say we're going on a break and we're going to come back.
We're going on a break, yeah. No, if you like this podcast, I hope that you will subscribe and leave a thumbs up. And I'll see you on the next episode, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.